Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao, konnichiwa, good morning, bonjour. How are you today? Hope you're doing well. This is Ken at 10, live broadcasting for you from sunny Southwest 16. When I say sunny, actually a little bit overcast. We're in Norbury, which is smack bang between Streatham to the north and Croydon to the south. And we talk about property pretty much all day, every day, live at 10 every day, just talking about the market, what's happening, what's going on here at the coalface where buyers and sellers are negotiating, falling out, falling in love with houses, each other, falling out again, divorcing, marrying, having babies, moving schools, you name it. It all happens, doesn't it? We sell and let property, so we kind of see the market from all sides. And right now is a really strange time because, as you can see from the ticker at the bottom of the screen there, we now have just 7 days left until the end of the first stamp duty holiday, which has been, depending on which side of the coin you sit, a phenomenal success or maybe a disaster. I think it depends on where you see yourself in that loop, really. I mean, there is an argument that prices have risen so much that actually any discount that you've received by buying now is lost in that. There's also an argument that it was unnecessary given the impetus after the lockdown. People were inclined to move anyway, the race for space, people moving out of London, looking for greener, cleaner spaces outside of the smoke. And that's certainly been a trend we've seen a lot of. So really interesting to see what happens next. And I suppose it brings you to the next question, which is, this one, will property prices fall and what will the implications be? Indications are so far, I mean, certainly it depends on where you are, because like any market, we tend to find that it is completely dependent on where you are in terms of geographical location. For instance, here in the suburbs of London, we've had some price rises, but not meteoric by any means. Central London has been stagnant or reversing, which is a trend that is changing around quite quickly, which is interesting, particularly prime. And some of the outlying areas that previously have had very low rates of growth have seen their growth go exponentially off the scale as people look to relocate in holiday-type hotspots, such as Devon, Cornwall, the South Coast are very popular. And the Lake District, places like that, really surprising how they've picked up. So in answer to the question, will property prices fall and what will the implications be? The first thing to say is, because I know everybody worries about this, it's the big worry, isn't it? What happens if property prices fall? And the truth is, if you're living in a house which you don't intend to sell, then the implications are nil, actually, right now. It may be a good time, actually, if you're considering refinancing, and this is not financial advice per se, because we're not financial advisors, not licensed to give you that advice, but could be an idea to consider your finances because rates right now are historically very, very low. We've just heard about a sub 1% mortgage, and that is with a 40% deposit. Will we ever see that again? Well, inflation's starting to climb. And when inflation starts to climb, at some point, the Bank of England could jump in, or the Monetary Policy Committee could jump in and say interest rates have to go up. I think that's highly unlikely in the short to medium term because there are so many other structural issues with the UK economy, and it would hit businesses very hard, and the government won't want that right now. So I think interest rates are likely to stay low in the medium term. And the reason that's significant is because the availability and price of money is so critical in the whether or not property prices are going to rise or fall. If money is cheap and people's confidence is high and the availability of money is there, then prices will continue to sustain. On top of that, of course, what we got this time around that we didn't have back in the 90s when we had the last big recession, except the 2007-9, which was relatively shallow. What we have now is buy-to-let on a very large scale. And obviously those yields are something a lot of people do rely on. So if prices fall, particularly in areas with good yields, then that's an opportunity for buy-to-let investors to get involved, especially on an institutional scale now where we have build-to-rent going on a lot. So, yeah, interesting to see what's going to go on. The answer is nobody can tell you whether prices will rise or fall in the short term. My gut feeling is that what we'll see is a much slower level of supply, a much slower and lower transaction level over the next few months. But I still think the confidence is there to sustain current levels. And hopefully what we'll see is sensible rises. I would like to see a rise just around or just above inflation over the next few years. And that gives people that are buying confidence on the one hand, and on the other hand, you don't get into the situation where you have negative equity, which is in nobody's interest either. I appreciate that everybody wants houses to be affordable, but for those already locked into house prices, the last thing they want to see is a big drop off. Nobody can really tell you, though. It's one of those things. We never had a pandemic before, have we? And maybe we never will again, who knows? But then there will be something else. It won't be the pandemic, but it will be a thing. It could be a structural crisis with the economy. It could be something else. But this is why it's so hard to predict, and I've often said that nobody really knows. The only people that really know what's going on are those on the front line, seeing what's happening day to day. So we'll be here every day telling you how we feel about the market, what the level of supply and demand is like, and how the market feels in general, to keep you up to date with what we think is going on locally here in Southwest 16 and more nationally with the headlines. Let's get into some headlines now. This is a good news story, I'm pleased to report. This is in Sky News, BBC and the Financial Times. And this is about leasehold firms agreeing to changes after a watchdog investigation. Really critical, this, because I was really angry about this happening in the first place. This is about the doubling of ground rents, making houses leasehold in the first site was criminal in my view, but many of the big players did this. And two big players in the leasehold sector have now agreed to change the way they operate following this investigation. House builder Persimmon will allow its leaseholders to buy the freehold of their property at a discount. And insurance company Aviva, which bought those leaseholds from house builders, will repay homeowners who saw their ground rents double. And that's really, really good news. This is a real win for thousands of leaseholders, I quote. Too long, people have found themselves trapped in homes they cannot sell or struggle to sell or cannot refinance. So it's great news, and let's hope that other builders, major house builders, take the lead from that. Apart from that, prime London property is coming back into vogue. This is good news for those of you who are super rich. Now let's look into this. This is an article in the Evening Standard. Wealthy Londoners are buying super luxury houses at the heart of the capital at record prices in the wake of 3 lockdowns, with 817.4 mil spent on top-end homes in the 6 months to April. This is up by more than a fifth on the same period last year. New data reveals the number of buyers registering for properties costing more than 10 million was 150% higher than in May than in January 2020, when the capital was in the middle of the pre-COVID-19 crisis and the Boris bounce. Knight Frank's data shows that 36.8 billion of the world's wealth is now targeting property in what is known as prime central London. Why is that? It's interesting, isn't it? Well, there is an element of property as an asset class, and central London being a very solid and sturdy asset class. And I think, that's what people are looking at is, in the end, when we look at it, is this going to be a secure investment? The yields, by the way, on prime tend to be very low indeed. People don't buy for that reason. They buy for capital growth reasons. And that's not capital growth reasons, capital growth reasons. And that's quite different to why you might buy in a more outlying area where you'd look at the yield and the capital growth becomes a bonus, or vice versa. It really does depend on your investment strategy. A couple of things about podcasts. We're hoping to have Adam Messer on. He's a mortgage broker, to comment on mortgages on the next edition of the podcast. And then the one after that, we've got the megastar Paul Champlina. He's of Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlords series that's coming back onto Channel 5, I believe, and has been on most of the major stations commentating on the investment market, landlords, the law. He's been on many radio stations and TV stations commenting on what you can do to get rid of your tenants through his various companies, and what the current situation is in terms of legislation, what's to come, the ending of Section 21. We'll be talking about all of that with Paul. He's a great guy and really has had a meteoric rise to fame. So looking forward to that. That's all coming in about a week's time on the podcast. Apart from that, back to some other issues. The inflationary records. Pressures hit record high as economy rebounds. A closely watched survey has revealed that cost pressures in UK businesses rose at the fastest rate for 13 years. Businesses are reporting an ongoing surge in demand in June as the economy reopens, led by the hospitality sector. Well, this is good news, isn't it, to see the economy reopening? And I suspect it's the start of London reopening as well. And as we get more and more people vaccinated, I suspect that rollout will lead to the suburbs around London becoming more popular, like ourselves, as people look to get into affordable areas which are commuter towns, especially because many people at the moment that are currently Zoom commuting, their employers want them back. That's what's coming out loud and clear, if not for all of the week, for most of it. And therefore, there will be a need to commute. And for those that have moved a long way out, that could be a very costly commute back in, which is one of the things that's always driven house prices closer to the city here, where we're zone 3, is that people would love to move out more and perhaps suffer the commute on the one hand, but on the other hand, can they afford the extra rail fares, which are always running ahead of inflation? So that's another story entirely. So yeah, in terms of the deadline, we've got a couple of vendors that are going to lose out. One, because the chain's just incomplete and we kind of anticipated that. The other one, because the buyer pulled out last minute for no particular reason. Very frustrating for our clients. I suspect, as I've said many times before, we'll see many more people withdrawing from those sales within the next week as there is some sort of acrimonious disputes between sellers and buyers, where people were anticipating making the deadline, and for one reason or another, the vendor solicitor or the vendor, the purchaser or the purchaser solicitor appeared to have made a gaffe or been hesitating or dragging their heels, and therefore the other side just says enough already. So I suspect we might see a slight uptick in property very early in July as those properties come back to market to be resold. So that's one to watch for, and we'll certainly be keeping you up to date with all of that. Apart from that, busy on valuations today, lots going on in the office, and a lovely day for it too. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Up the England for next Tuesday, huh? And this week, it's the legendary Caroline Rollins' birthday. More about that tomorrow. She's one of our colleagues, and this morning was Cupcakes Day, but the celebrations don't stop. Oh no, not here in the JA family. We'll be doing all sorts of sing-songs and everything. So until tomorrow, we'll see you then. Stay safe, look after your family and friends, and take care of yourselves.